So we're going to continue to solve equations. Today we're solving equations that are in fractions. So first thing we want to do is find a least common denominator between all three of our fractions that we have here. So that may involve factoring our denominator if we can. So out of these three denominators, we see that x squared minus 9 can be factored more. What does x squared minus 9 factor into? X plus 3, x minus 3. So my least common denominator would be x times x minus 3 times x plus 3. And now I have another x minus 3, but I don't have to include that one again because it's already on my list. So my least common denominator is just x times x minus 3 times x plus 3. So we're going to use our least common denominator. And we multiply by our least common denominator to each fraction. So everything gets multiplied by x times x minus 3 times x plus 3. X times x minus 3 times x plus 3. And x times x minus 3 times x plus 3. Now, if it's already in our denominator, we can cancel it out. So here I have an x in my denominator, so that cancels out with the x. So now I'm just multiplying 3 times x minus 3 times x plus 3. For the second one, I have an x minus 3 in my denominator, so that cancels out with the x minus 3. So here I'm just multiplying negative 2 times x plus 3. And then in the third one, in our denominator, we have x plus 3 times x minus 3, so that cancels out with the x minus 3 and the x plus 3. So this one would just be negative 12 times x. So let's multiply that all together. I'm going to write it up top over here so we have lots of room. So we have 3 times x plus 3 times x minus 3. For our first fraction. The second one is minus 2 times x plus 3. And then that's equal to negative 12 times x. Yeah, so we're multiplying everything by what's missing from the denominator. And that gets multiplied to the numerator. And now that our denominators are all the same, technically, they cancel. So we're only looking at the numerators now. Bless you. So we're looking at this as our equation. So I'm going to multiply this out and simplify. So first I'm going to start by multiplying the x plus 3 times x minus 3. What does that multiply into? X squared minus 9. Perfect. It's what we just FOILed out. So then when we distribute the 3 to that, we get 3x squared minus 27. Next, I'm going to take negative 2x and distribute that to the x and the plus 3. So it'd be negative 2x squared minus 2x, 6x, because 2x times 3 would be minus 6x.
Why can't you just do...
So I'm taking this whole thing and just distributing it. And then that's equal to negative 12x. What do you think I have to do next? We're going to combine our like terms. So 3x squared minus 2x squared would just be x squared. I'm going to add the 12x over, combine it with the negative 6x. So that would be plus 6x minus 27 equals 0. What do you think I'm going to have to do next to solve? Factor. Our leading coefficient's 1, so we can just check what are two factors of negative 27 that add to 6?
9 and negative 3.
9 and negative 3. Perfect. So this factors into x plus 9 and x minus 3. We're still solving, so it's equal to 0. I'm going to set each piece equal to 0. So I get x equals what?
Negative 9.
Negative 9 and 3. Now in all of these questions, we have to check for extraneous solutions. So you always have to check the answer. And when I mean check the answer, when I say check the answer, we have to plug it into our denominators to make sure we don't get 0 in our denominators. So I'm going to look at my 3 denominators down here. Plug in my 2 answers to make sure I don't end up with 0 in one of my denominators. So my first answer I found was negative 9. If I plug in negative 9 into the first one, we're good. Negative 9 minus 3 is not 0, so we're good there. And then negative 9 squared would be 81 minus 9 is not 0. So we're good there. So negative 9 is one of our answers. We checked that one. Now let's plug in 3. So I'm going to plug in 3 into all my denominators because I need to make sure that we don't get 0 in one of the denominators. So if I plug in 3 to the first one, we're good there. If I plug in 3 to the second one, what's 3 minus 3? 0. So is 3 one of my answers? No. It's an extraneous solution, so it does not count. So our only answer here is negative 9. So we check our answers to make sure we don't have 0 in the denominator. So first step is always we want to find our least common denominator. So our first 2 denominators are already factored for us, so we're good there. Let's factor our third one, see what we get when we simplify this. What are 2 factors of negative 8 that add to negative 2? Negative 4 and 2. So this factors into x minus 4 and x plus 2. So our least common denominator, I'm going to take my denominator from each one. I have x plus 2. I have an x minus 4. And then in the second one, I already have an x minus 4 and an x plus 2, so I don't have to include those again. So my least common denominator is just x plus 2 times x minus 4. So in the next part, we're technically multiplying everything by our least common denominator, but the only thing that actually gets multiplied is what's missing. So in my first fraction, what's missing from the denominator? X minus 4. So we're just going to multiply x minus 4 to the top. Because the x plus 2 ends up canceling out with the bottom, so we don't really need to write it. You can save yourself the work. You're only multiplying by what's missing. In the next fraction, what's missing there from the denominator? X plus 2. So x plus 2 is going to get multiplied to negative 5. In the third fraction, what are we missing? Nothing. So it's just negative 9. So let's rewrite all of that into our equation. So I have 7 times x minus 4, negative 5 times x plus 2, and then that's equal to negative 9. All right, let's multiply this out now and simplify. So I'm going to distribute the 7. We get 7x minus 28. Distribute the negative 5. So you get minus 5x minus 10. That's equal to negative 9. What would I do next? Combine like terms. So 7x minus 5x is 2x. Negative 28 minus 10 would be negative 38. That's equal to negative 9. What would I do next? We could add 9, move it over. Am I going to have to factor here or just regularly solve? Just solve regular. We're just solving for x. So I can move all my constants to one side and keep the x on the other, since I only have like a single x here. So I'm going to add 38 to both sides. So 2x is equal to 38 minus 9, which is 29. What do we do next? Divide by 2. So x is equal to 29 over 2. You can just leave it as a fraction. Check for extraneous solutions. If we plug in 29 over 2 into all of our x's in the denominators, we don't end up with 0, so we're good there. So that would be our answer. All right, for number 2. The process is a lot easier when we have just like a single fraction equals either a number or another fraction, because I could make this a fraction equals a fraction. What do I do here to solve? How would I solve this? I have a fraction equals a fraction. Cross multiply, thank you. So it's a lot easier when it's just a fraction equals a fraction. You could do the same process, but it's essentially just cross multiplying. So we have 8 is equal to negative 7 times x plus 9. I'm going to distribute the negative 7, so we get negative 7x minus 63 is equal to 8. What would we do next? Add 63. So we get 71 is equal to negative 7x, and then divide by negative 7. So x is equal to negative 71 over 7. If I plug that into the x in the denominator, am I going to get 0? No, so we're good. All right, so 6, since we have two fractions on one side, we need to multiply by our least common denominator. So we have to find what our least common denominator is. My first denominator is x, the second one is x minus 1, and our third denominator we can just say is 1. So what would our least common denominator be? So remember, we have to include everything from our denominators, so it's going to be x times x minus 1 times 1, but you don't need the 1. What would we do next? What do we do, Tomas? We want to multiply by what's missing. So for my first fraction, my least common denominator is x times x minus 1. It has an x on the bottom, so we're just multiplying x minus 1 here. What do I need to multiply in the second fraction? X. And what gets multiplied in the third fraction? X times x minus 1. So in this step, you multiply by what's missing. So we have 1 times x minus 1, which would just be x minus 1, plus 2 times x, so 2x, and then that's equal to 3 times x minus 1. What do we do next? What do we do next?
Add 2x plus x.
Okay, we can add 2x plus x. I'm also going to distribute the 3x here. So we get 3x minus 1 is equal to 3x squared minus 3x. What would we do next? move everything to the other side. They don't cancel out. Be careful because we're subtracting 3x to move it to the other side. What's negative 3x minus 3x? Negative 6x. And I'm also going to add the 1 to move it to the other side too. Because we have an x squared and an x, we know that we're going to have to factor. How would I factor here? Because if we multiply the first times the last, we get 3. Do we have two factors of 3 that add to negative 6? No. So it doesn't factor normally, so we have to use our quadratic formula. So we have a, b, and c. Let's plug it all in. We got negative 6, which turns into positive 6, plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared, minus 4 times a times c, over 2a. So this would be 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 12 over 6. So 6 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 6. Let's see if we can simplify the square root of 24. What are two factors of 24?
12 and 2.
12 and 2. Two factors of 12. So I have a group of 2's that's going to come to the outside. What stays on the inside?
6.
6. So it's 6 plus or minus 2 square root 6 over 6. Can we simplify?
Yeah.
How?
Divide everything by 2.
Divide everything by 2. So all 3 of our whole numbers are divisible by 2. So now divide them all by 2. We get 3 plus or minus square root 6 over 3. That would be our answer. Obviously here, if we plug it back in, it's not going to give us 0 in the denominator, so we're good. That would be our answer. So the only other way that we could simplify this would be if we split it up into fractions. So 3 over 3 plus or minus square root 6 over 3, which would be 1 plus or minus square root 6 over 3. So if you do it that way, just make sure you put the 3 under the 3 and the square root 6. So like these are the same thing. It probably wants it this way on WebAssign, but this is okay for a test. All right, so for number 7, first we want to find a least common denominator. So my first denominator is x minus 6. The second one is x plus 3. So I have to include both of those on my list. And let's factor out our third denominator to see what factors we have here. So what are two factors of negative 18 that add to negative 3?
6 and 3.
Negative 6 and 3. Perfect. So this factors into x minus 6 and x plus 3. Do I need to include either of those on my least common denominator list? No, because they're already there. So if it's already there, we don't have to write it again. What would I do next? What do I do next? Awesome, we multiply by what's missing. So what's missing from my first fraction? What's missing from the denominator? X plus 3. So we're going to have to multiply x minus 3 times x plus 3. What's missing from my second fraction? X minus 6. And then what's missing from my third fraction? Nothing. Because there's already both of them in the bottom. So nothing's missing there. So here we have to multiply x minus 3 times x plus 3 plus x plus 5 times x minus 6. And that's equal to negative 2x squared. So the signs from the original question stay there. Just don't forget. A lot of people will forget to put like the equal sign in it or ask where does the equal sign go. It just stays in the same spot. Everything that's on the left stays on the left. Everything on the right stays on the right. Bless you. So let's multiply x minus 3 times x plus 3. When we multiply this out, what are we going to get? Awesome. X squared minus 9. You can FOIL it out or use your conjugate shortcut there. Next one's not conjugate, so we actually have to FOIL it out. So here we get x squared minus 6x plus 5x minus 30. That's equal to negative 2x squared. What do we do next? Combine like terms. So on the left side, we get 2x squared minus x, and then minus 39 is equal to negative 2x squared. I'm going to move the negative 2x squared to the other side, so I'm going to add 2x squared. So we get 4x squared minus x minus 39 is equal to 0. What do we do next?
Quadratic formula.
We'll probably have to end up using the quadratic. Let's see if we can factor. 4 times negative 39 would be what?
156.
156. Awesome. Do we have two factors of negative 156 that add to negative 1? 12 and 13. Which one's negative? 13. So here this factors into x plus 12 and x minus 13. What do I have to do next? Divide by 4. Awesome. Since we started with multiplying, we want to go back in and divide. Thank goodness we found factors, because the quadratic formula with these numbers would not be fun. 12 divided by 4 is what?
Negative. So 3.
3. If we can't divide, move it in front. So this would be 4x minus 13 equals 0. We're solving, so we need to set them both equal to 0. So x plus 3 equals 0. 4x minus 13 equals 0. So x is equal to negative 3, and x is equal to 13 over 4. What do we have to do next?
Nothing.
Are you sure?
We check.
Check.
Do we have to check?
You have to check. Because let's plug in negative 3. Negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9, so we're good there. Because we're checking to make sure it's not 0. What's negative 3 plus 3?
2.
0. So is negative 3 one of my answers?
No.
No. So that does not work. And then you can also plug in 13 over 4, but since it's a fraction, it's going to work. So what's our answer here? 13 over 4.